government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Former director of the NSA, his subdirector, William Binney, will be joining us today. Other than that, wow, look at the Hill newspaper. Watchdog groups brace for surprises in massive $1.014 trillion spending bill. And if you go back to drudgereport.com, where Drudge has a stack of stories dealing with this, the Republicans are trying to keep it secret, the provisions from the public, saying that secrecy is justified. They're working with the Democrats. Why so secret? GOP keeps tight lid on $1 trillion spending bill. Conservatives claim leaders trying to pass before anyone can read it. So you notice it's only libertarians / conservatives that are watchdogging the Republicans and the Democrats. It's only the Tea Party-esque type people that care about anything. I'm not saying they're perfect either, but it's always that group fighting, taking our guns, getting rid of our borders, making the president a dictator, trying to stop tax increases, trying to stop our power plants from being shut off, trying to stop the federalization of all the schools, the federalization of the police. It was mainly conservatives starting to worry about the militarization of police. That's why you had the Justice Department stir all this rioting up so they could then get conservatives to pile back on to supporting the police state. But meanwhile, in the bill, inside the bill is the legislation for derivatives. In fact, I had 2 articles in my stack yesterday on that, one by Kurt Nemo and another one by Krieger, dealing with it, where it just signs us on to unlimited derivatives. New law would make taxpayers potentially liable for trillions in derivatives losses. If the quadrillion-dollar derivatives bubble implodes, who should be stuck with the bill? It's actually 2 quadrillion, but I guess technically you can say the quadrillion bill or the quadrillions bill. That story is up on Infowars.com by Michael Schneider, the Economic Collapse blog, and then links through to Zero Hedge and other reports, and he has a copy of the bill. Unsurprisingly, the main backer of the bill that's rolled in to the larger spending bill is notorious Wall Street lackey Jim Himes, Democrat, Connecticut, a former Goldman Sachs employee who has discovered lobbyist payoffs can be just as lucrative as a career in financial services. The last time Mr. Himes made an appearance on these pages was in the March 2013 Congress moves to deregulate Wall Street. So that's the kind of legislation being bundled up, pork-barreled, into the omnibus spending bill. And the Republican leadership is trying to keep most of it secret. Kind of like 4 separate times George Bush Jr. over and over and over again with the Republicans and Democrats kept it secret what was in the immigration bill. But every time Senator Sessions would leak it to the public, where it legalized felons, gave free tuition to illegals, this is the plan. This is what's being pushed. This is what's being planned. We're going to come back and break all of this down today. And then the latest disgusting statement. Barbara Bush gushes about Bill Clinton, says he treats H.W. Bush like a father. And then that ties into Bush is out in the news today. We have a video clip of that. George W. Bush, we've got some of his statements. So we've got more statements from them, basically calling Hillary Clinton family and things like that. I mean, this is our problem, are these 2 families. Joseph Goebbels, the oft-quoted minister of propaganda in Nazi Germany, famously said in many different ways that propaganda needs to be simple and mindless and only allow people to be lazy and to buy into it. It needs to be simple and easy, not complex. And I saw a quote by Eric Hoffer that basically says the same thing. It's in a graphic on the front page of Infowars.com, today's main image. Propaganda does not deceive people. It merely helps them to deceive themselves. And that is exactly what we face. Dumbed down, simplistic, mindless fraud. It's up to us to discover the reality of what's being done to us. Not to look at who's wearing the nicest jacket, or has the best hair, or who has the nicest tie, or who has the best speechwriters, but who is real and who is promoting common sense ideas that have been successful and created amazing stability and prosperity for time immemorial. We are teleprompter-free radio, teleprompter-free television, simulcasting the syndicated radio broadcast across the United States. Infowars.com/show to find the free video feeds, because you will often hear me mentioning video or articles or legislation or documents that we have on screen. So I call this radio transmission Radio Squared, or radio to the next power. We, of course, pioneered not just having a webcam. I had a webcam off and on 14 years ago. But we've pioneered the last decade plus simulcasting the radio with a full live news TV transmission, adding a whole layer of reality. And the reason I did that, the reason I do that, is the same reason that I made a documentary film, my first film, in 1997. America Destroyed by Design, 2 years after I first got on air 20 years ago. And it's because I had the state documents, the State Department documents, the federal legislation, the UN UNESCO treaty. I had all of it on our national parks and national heritage sites and huge buffer zones, sometimes hundreds of miles around it, being put under United Nations control. And I had congressmen on to talk about it. And I had physicists and scientists and environmental scientists on, like Dr. Michael Kaufman, who had the UN maps and had testified to Congress. And people would call in and say, it is insane. The UN is not taking over our national parks. The UN is not shutting down silver and gold mines, in a case in Colorado, 30 miles away from the park, saying it's under a UN buffer zone. But they did. It was even in the Denver Post. But I couldn't show people on radio what I was saying. So I started Infowars.com in '96 as an attempt to link to the articles. But back then, most newspapers didn't even have their news online. They would just have the headline and then a link to a subscription area. So I would do things like clip out the newspapers. And I had listeners all over the country who would mail me the newspapers, usually a week old, and then I would clip them out. And I would take photos of them and put them on Infowars.com. But then the problem was I couldn't afford the bandwidth bills of the thousands, tens of thousands of people a day then, now it's millions, that visited Infowars.com. And so I said, I've got to make money so I can pay this bandwidth. And so I began to make films and sell films and tell people to make copies of them. And I'm not going off a rabbit trail here. I'm trying to get people to think about how 20 years ago, almost no one knew the Federal Reserve was private. And if you confronted someone with its charter, they would laugh at you and say, shut up, kook. Because they didn't want to be involved. They just needed some propaganda of the word conspiracy theorist that's simple, that's mindless, that's dumbed down, that's an excuse for them to ignore what you're saying and move on. Now, fast forward from 1995 to what's about to be 2015 in just a few weeks. People now know the Federal Reserve is private. National polls over 90%. People want it over 90% in Gallup polls, audited or shut down. The worm completely turned. And the worm's turning on abortion. And the worm's turning on gun control, victim disarmament. And the worm is turning on energy. The worm is turning on everything. We are on the verge of a complete political awakening and realignment of the magnitude that this world has never seen, not just here in the United States, but all over the globe. So what are the technocrats going to do? They're going to use their control of social networks to gatekeep what they allow to catch fire. And they're only going to try to have violent socialist, Fabian socialist, and communist movements financed by Wall Street and other financial interests to be ineffectual revolutions that also discredit revolution. Now, I'm not in the classical sense a revolutionary. I am a restorationist. I want my legitimate republic back because it's the best idea in history. It works really well when implemented. It produces more freedom, more security, more wealth than we can even handle. And thus the byproduct, the side effect of us being decadent, usurped slobs on average at this point. But the worm's turning as we go out of prosperity into decadence, into slouching, into tyranny, and then the Renaissance begins again. And that's the type of revolution I want. That's why I restate that routinely, is a peaceful one of ideas. You always hear, oh, let's have a shooting war. Oh, let's have a march and go after the Capitol. The system wants that because they're losing the long-term societal info war. That's why they're trying to flood the country to turn us into the Tower of Babel where we can't communicate with each other and drive down the wages. That's why they're trying to shut off the power. That's why they're trying to increase the prices. That's why they're desperately trying to stir up race war all over the country. Because they do not have a hope if they don't engage in divide and conquer. Yesterday on the Sunday show, I talked about Sunday broadcast from 4 to 6 p.m. I talked about a comment on InfoWars on a story, again, out of Denver, where during a anti-police demonstration, anti-police brutality demonstration, a couple cops got run over. Pretty bad. Two of them are in critical condition. And the crowd began chanting, hit him again, run over him again. And we do have that video. We're going to play it later. And we said that was wrong. And people in the comments, a minority of them said, oh, now you're for the police. What's your problem? Hit him again. Students cheer when car runs into cops, critically injuring one. Now they're saying two are critically injured. And then a commenter below said, no, InfoWars sides with who's right on a case-by-case basis, not off of what color you are, not off of what group you are. And that's absolutely right. And I can't believe how mindless and tribal people have gotten. Whether it's the cops, whether it's white people, mixed folks, black people, whatever. Humans are all humans. We act just the same. Very tribal, very dumbed down. Because the cops have now been caught in Indianapolis tweeting out, I can't breathe hashtag, basically making fun of people. Unbelievably horrible. Just like chanting, run over the cops some more. It's the same mindless tribal garbage that will end our civilization. Disgusting. By the way, now the NFL has picked up the case of the black man choked to death, and I believe it's manslaughter. The cop was allowed off. I think it's a travesty of justice. And if now the NFL wants to put on their shoes, I can't breathe, that's a lot better than making Brown their poster child, because Brown was a thug. The evidence is overwhelming. And that's not the poster boy to reform the police. That is not the horse we need to bet on here. I want to reform the police so bad it makes my head spin. The case of Eric Garner, or the case of Kelly Thomas. Now, those are cases people should be looking at. But see, the media only picks up on racial incidences because it drives ratings. But that's only at the grassroots level in the media. At the higher level, it is pushed and promulgated by the talking heads of the White House and the social engineers because it's a Ford Foundation playbook to create division. Now, I'm done talking about that. I just wanted to basically get into that because that's why they dumb the propaganda down. Propaganda does not deceive people. It merely helps them to deceive themselves, Eric Hoffer. And I absolutely agree with that statement. So this broadcast is the opposite of dumbed down, talking point, stupidity. This is history integrated with research, integrated with common sense, integrated with archetypes of what really makes humans tick. We're going to come back with George W. Bush saying Hillary is his sister-in-law. Totally disgusting. These families work together. But now that he can't deliver all the free cars and houses and goodies that he promised back in the 2008 campaign, the Justice Department, with the Ford Foundation and others, are delivering racial crises and riots and demonstrations aimed at distracting everyone from the globalist real agenda. And what's the real agenda? I think I'm going to shoot a special report for the nightly news, but I want to spend a few days producing it and really add a lot of research to it with the author of Compromised, Clinton, Bush, and the CIA. We need to get Reed back on the show. He probably hadn't been on in 5 years. And all the other experts and the Iran-Contra documents, because it wasn't Reagan running Iran-Contra. It was George Herbert Walker Bush with the Democrats as well. They just kind of double-crossed them. And the Clintons, it's been declassified, were both CIA, a fake couple. They were under the UK section chief for the CIA when they were Rhodes Scholars. They were installed as co-governors, basically, in Arkansas. George Herbert Walker Bush met 11 times that we know of in the year before Bill Clinton ran as governor. He would visit him in Kennebunkport, Maine. He would stay at his home in Houston. I mean, these people were thick as thieves. Now, back then, they acted like they were enemies. But the former CIA director also got caught lying. He wasn't made CIA director out of nowhere. He was in the CIA right after he got out of the Army Air Corps, it was the Navy Air Corps. I guess he was in the Navy, flying aircraft in World War II. So who you think George Herbert Walker Bush is, isn't who he is. He's like Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is a KGB front / FSB today. And that's exactly what the Bushes are. And they created the Clintons to be their go-between. And I remember having Larry Nichols and Terry Reid and just all the insiders on back in the 90s breaking this down. And now, I mean, back then we talked about it, people thought it was wild. Now it's basically admitted. We have Laura, we have Barbara, we have Bush Sr., we have Bush Jr., we have Jeb, we have Marvin, we have all of them worshiping the Clintons. And let me tell you, when you look at the Bush's agenda versus their rhetoric and compare it to the Clintons, it is a carbon copy. A carbon copy. And this goes to the rhinos and the Rockefeller Republicans, as George Herbert Walker Bush called himself back in the 70s. They are what they call Rockefeller Republicans. If you can't beat Barry Goldwater, if you can't beat the real conservative movement, well, you just simply co-opt it. National Review was founded by the Central Intelligence Agency to control the right. Look it up. William F. Buckley, CIA. Just like Anderson Cooper, CIA. Just like Miss Magazine, look it up. Gloria Steinem, founded by the CIA. New York Times, look it up. Look it up. They want to control the fake left-right paradigm. We're transcending it. Sure, there's a lot more I agree with the Republicans and their rhetoric, but they don't follow it. The Texas Republican Party charter and platform sounds like I wrote it, but they don't follow it. And the system's scared that it might start to happen. So we have Barbara Bush and we have Bush. Let's go to the newest one with George W. calling Hillary his sister-in-law. Here it is.
You've often referred to Bill Clinton, and you talked about his relationship with your father and how it developed, and your mother as well, and he's your brother from another mother. What does that make Hillary Clinton to the Bush family?
My sister-in-law.
Two families.
That's what I'm asking you.
Directly controlled by Yale and Harvard. Through Skull and Bones, through this network. We're going to come back and play Barbara Bush. Who loves Bill Clinton? Barbara Bush does. I mean, I just want to remind people of this because I was in a gun shop back in like 2007, and I was complaining about Bush supporting the assault weapons ban, and a guy behind the counter at McBride's said, Alex, I'm sick of your always saying something true. He does not support that. And the owner goes, yeah, he does. That's true. He's right. I mean, just stop living in delusional land, okay? The Bushes are bad news. Let's hear from another one of the Bushes, the grand matriarch, Barbara Bush, mama of the whole CIA brood of skull and bones pirates.
That's right. My husband, Bill Clinton, and I have become great friends, and Bill visits us every summer, and we don't agree politically, but we don't talk politics. And I think you'd have to understand, I read someplace, before you're critical of someone, you should remember that they did not have the advantages you had as a child. A loving mother and father. Bill's father wasn't around. And I think that he thinks of George a little bit like the father he didn't have. And he's very loving to him. And I really appreciate that. And when they went on that long tsunami trip, George told me Bill insisted he stay in the bed. And Bill insisted that he was taken care of. And that was really nice. I love Bill Clinton. Maybe not his politics, but I love him.
Pure, unadulterated script-reading bull. A behind the scenes with Barbara Bush, where she really tells you what's going on. Isn't that just so sweet? Meanwhile, I have interviewed known, admitted CIA, not assets, but employees, agents, who were at Mena and saw the Bushes, Clinton, all of them. They would meet there at the airfield where the goodies were coming in, C-130 by C-130. Oh, they're such a nice little family. They're such nice little boys. Bill Clinton was the protege of the CIA section chief in England, and then he was assigned under George Herbert Walker Bush. Look it up. Hillary as well. But it's worse than that. The Rhodes Scholarship, on record set up by Cecil Rhodes, who wrote books on how they were going to establish a world corporate government and fold the British Empire into that by stealth so that no one could stop them from taking over and merging with the United States, which is what the Council on Foreign Relations was set up for in New York City at the Pratt House in 1922. And what does Skull and Bones push for? All the exact same program. That's all these people are. It's just like Vladimir Putin. They are fronts for the special interests that run this country. And then, we've got two different political parties, and it looks like there's differences on the surface, but when it comes down to brass tacks, it's exactly the same. And there's a quote by Carroll Quigley in his book, Tragedy and Hope, the head of Georgetown Political Science, Bill Clinton's other mentor, that he thanked in his victory speech, by the way. He thanked Carroll Quigley and David Rockefeller, and then he broke down crying and said that David Rockefeller was like his father. And there's a lot of evidence that he's the illegitimate son of the then governor of Arkansas, who was a Rockefeller when he was born. And it's admitted that Bill Clinton's mother was a lady of the night. And then he's got this supposed father that looks or acts nothing like him. The point is, Clinton, who's famously filmed meeting with JFK when he was a teenager, Bill Clinton meeting with JFK, shaking hands with JFK, being brought to meet with like 8 other youth with JFK, he was fast-tracked from the beginning. And, of course, we said this back in 1995, 1996, 97, and it sounded crazy. Now it's all admitted. This is how they operate. And now we see John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, and others not letting the public see the spending bill, over $1 trillion. Not going after him for Fast and Furious or Benghazi, not trying to repeal any of his unlawful executive actions, not trying to stop the open borders, saying they won't repeal Obamacare. To me, this is really the big issue. That we just had a landslide Despite the fact that the blue blood Republicans tried to block every Tea Party person they could, they failed massively. But still, they're hanging on by their fingernails right now. Half of the senators that voted for Obamacare are now gone. So there is a political awakening. We are actually getting things done. It's been said that if elections did anything, they'd be illegal. I think it was Mark Twain said that. But that's not entirely true. If there's enough of an awakening at the city, county, state, federal level, we could actually save this country peacefully. But I look at this headline, this photo from Politico, House Senate negotiators near spending deal. The goal is to have the massive measure ready by late today, Monday. And I look at Mitch McConnell with Harry Reid, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi. I mean, who are these people? And I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who I dislike more. Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid. It's probably Harry Reid I hate. Of these four people, let me see. Harry Reid is number one. And then Nancy Pelosi's number two. And then Boehner's number three. And then McConnell's number four. Because at least McConnell has unenergetically, but still voted to block anti-gun measures. Boehner's actually supported some before. Pelosi is just a larcenous demon on every level. And then Harry Reid is an actual done. I mean, these people all make me want to vomit. But I got to be honest with you. I think I dislike Boehner and McConnell at an even deeper level because I know how bad Pelosi and Harry Reid are. With their armed bodyguards, but they want our guns, and they think our kids belong to them. They're just arrogant slobs on every level. But we know who they are. So at least we know. But Boehner and McConnell, they are in there, and there needs to be special elections, recalls. We need to start recalls of Boehner and of McConnell because they're not going for impeachment. They're not even trying to repeal. I mean, if they made Obama truly weak and cut off the funding and used hearings to expose all the crime, to build momentum towards a true impeachment and a reform, they could fix the country. But see, the country's working just fine for them. We're going into a North American Union. We're going into global governance. They are selfishly selling out our children and our future because, hey, they're at the top of the heap. They are traitors, and they know what they're doing. And they're so arrogant that they put out country music songs now, the Hillary PAC does, about how she loves family values. Oh. There's this new video we played yesterday. It was totally disgusting. And then they've got Hillary out going, I think we shouldn't have open borders. And I think you do have a right to have guns. I got a hankering to have some Wolf Brand chili. How long's it been since you had a big steaming bowl of Hillary Clinton bologna? Well, that's too long. Yeah, let's play part of this song. She's a loving wife, and she's got a lot of girlfriends. She's got more notches on her belt and more little darlings than Bill ever thought he could. Bill ain't gonna get to bring Sharon in the Lincoln bedroom. Hillary's gonna keep that stock with young Phyllis, all she needs. Your daughters belong to her. Your guns do as well. And if you like Janet Reno, well, you're going to love Hillary. All right. Yeah. I absolutely love Hillary, excuse me. Can we pull up Team America? What would you do? All right, I'm going to stop right there. I've already done that yesterday. I need to quit right now while I'm ahead. Coming up, watch out for that puddle. Soon it could be federally regulated. That's right. Bush and the CIA's ex-officials rebut torture report. UNICEF calls 2014 one of the worst years on record for the world's children. I love how they always run the program to save the kids. It's kind of like Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, former Nazi, founder of the Bilderberg Group, got caught using the World Wildlife Fund that he founded as a front for poaching. That's hilarious. And to build secret military bases all over Africa and try to overthrow, what, Kenya, was it? Yeah. That's kind of like Planned Parenthood's leading marches to, quote, respect black people and respect black lives. Planned Parenthood, founded by the Rockefellers, on record with the express mission to kill every black person they could. Kind of like George Soros, again, gets awards from the ADL. And then he goes on 60 Minutes and admits that he was a collaborator helping find hidden Jews and turn them and their wealth over to be sent to places like Dachau. And when the clip used to be on YouTube, they expunge it everywhere. Like if somebody's got it, send it to us. It's in news articles, but I cannot find it. My kingdom for my horse, Richard III said, my kingdom, or at least a handshake for that clip, because Soros is on there and they say, well, what responsibility do you hold for helping round up people, and do you feel bad? He says, no, I don't feel bad, and I have zero responsibility. I did what I had to survive, and I'm glad I survived. What a psychopathic statement. Well, it's not really psychopathic, because a psycho isn't in reality. A sociopath is, but just cares about no one but themselves. And he's the big liberal, see? And I know I bring that up every few months, the fact about Soros. It's just so bizarre. But the balkanization accelerates. The Philly mayor says police officers are increasingly afraid of the community. That's the plan. We're going to also get into another fabricated jobs report and the different protests being organized by people like Rahm Emanuel in Chicago. We're going to look at why the Obama administration is so determined to start a race war. But before we go any further, ladies and gentlemen, I want to, number one, thank all of the listeners out there for your incredible ongoing support of Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Every attempt is being made and has been made at levels 360 to suppress and shut us down and keep us quiet. But no weapon formed against us has prospered. Every weapon formed against us has only backfired in triplicate against our enemies. Continue to tell friends and family about Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, about the local AM and FM stations you listen to us on. Support those local sponsors. And continue to visit InfoWarsStore.com to get the highest quality water filtration, whether it's clearly filtered or ProPure. With promo code WATER, you get 10% off. It's great gifts. If you order any of the InfoWarsLife.com family of products by December 17th, that's about a week and a half you've got, you will get it before Christmas. We have a tiny bit of the Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver left. We have some of the Super Male Vitality left, Super Female Vitality still discounted. We have the original Survival Shield left. Survival Shield X2 is set to sell out, it looks like, today. We are selling out of the high-quality products across the board. Secret 12 has been sold out, but I'm told we may get some in next week. InfoWarsLife.com, and your purchase makes the entire broadcast possible. We have the Super Detox Special running right now. Fluoride Shield and X2, 46% off right now when you get Fluoride Shield and X2 together, but that's going to end when the X2 sells out. Bio Defense Pack, Survival Shield X2, and Lung Cleanse, now 58% off. InfoWars Life Challenge Pack, Super Male Vitality, and Survival Shield Retail. It's now 42% off. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. And we have the commemorative limited edition, second edition, because we changed the design, Molon Labe belt buckles, and a silver coin minted here, double stamped in America, only 500 made, Molon Labe on one side, made in 1776 on the other. Only 500 of those. Double stamped, highest quality, a limited edition, a serious collectible, and you get free with it a 1776 gold or green lapel pin of your choice. And it's a great memento, a great gift. Not suitable, way beyond suitable for framing. 500 of these in the box set. Amazing. Truly a gift to share with others and to share the Second Amendment and to support this operation.
Witnesses say at one point a car accelerated, went up onto the sidewalk, and hit the 4 DPD officers, dragging Officer Adsit behind. Denver police say the driver of that vehicle had a medical condition. The police union and others say some in the crowd cheered, the union issuing a statement saying immediately after the horrible accident yesterday injuring 4 Denver police officers, several parties in the protesting group cheered and chanted, "Hit him again." These actions are not only reprehensible, but quite possibly the most disturbing thing this association has ever heard.
All right, let's stop right there. I don't think it's the most disturbing thing you've ever heard. I'm sure you've heard about, you know, dead kids in basements and stuff. But it is very disturbing that random people would then see random cops run over and cheer it. But that's just like our article up on Infowars.com, where police department mocks Garner, who was choked to death, with hashtag "We Can't Breathe" tweet. Defensive police action backfires on Indianapolis department, who has now deleted the tweet. You can see the tweet and the response. This is an us against them mentality, and it's now being cast as racially based because the Democratic Party wants this to be racially based. Is there profiling on black people in many cities? Probably. I mean, undoubtedly it goes on. There's profiling against skaters. There's profiling against hippies. There are certain groups that the police have been trained to basically be scared of or to think are criminal. Namely, it's people that aren't wearing suits and ties. You want to be left alone by the police, wear a sports jacket, and drive a nice car. Is that discriminatory against poor people? I think so. But if you go to a job interview wearing a dirty T-shirt versus a sports jacket with a tie, and you know, versus being polite, not being polite, just saying thank you, just opening doors for people will make you more successful, because then other successful people will think you're higher quality. But see, a lot of poor folks today especially think it's cool to not be thankful and cool to be rude and cool to not dress nice. And that's been done by the MTV culture and social engineering to create a permanent, giant, swelling underclass. Or it's not cool to be successful. It's not cool to have a job. It's not cool to stay out of the system. It's cool to be in the system. That's when you're bona fide. Well, the system engineered it that way. Then they train the police you're the enemy. Then you act like the enemy. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what I'm getting at. And I think it's equally disgusting to cheer people being run over or to cheer someone being choked to death. Even if Garner deserved it, which he clearly didn't, it would have been despicable to make fun of his death, begging for his life, saying, "I can't breathe," while they had his arm pinned in a move where you can't roll over. And it's going to be killer cops, psychos, that are going to cause a lot of innocent police to get killed in this country. Because when the Civil War really kicks off, which we've been predicting for a long time is their goal, it's going to be devastating. And I am not going to enjoy watching citizens and the police kill each other while the globalists sit offshore and laugh. Stay with us. We are now into the second hour. William Binney is joining us coming up after the next break. Former head of technology at the NSA. He was one of the directors of the NSA. And we're going to really do something special here. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, does like the London Guardian, things like that. He's been on with yours truly twice, I think David Knight 2 or 3 other times. And he's going to come on and give us the latest on the Panopticon spy grid. He's going to come on and give us the latest on the police state. And we're going to open the phones up then at the bottom of the hour for your concise, focus, please, question directly to the biggest NSA whistleblower out there, way beyond Snowden. They tried to indict him. They tried to set him up. They tried to put him in jail. They failed. And he has a lot of courage. William Binney, who has been called, even by Nightline, the NSA's greatest code breaker ever. So he, you know, they've got movies out about breaking the German Enigma code and stuff, true stories. This is one of those type of guys, okay? I mean, this is the big brain guy. And he's moral. He's at the NSA. He learns they're illegally spying on the citizens. He resigns in 2002, shortly after 9/11, keeps his mouth shut about it, tries to work internally through the Congress, never happens, starts going public. So this is a big deal. I know it's not pearls before swine when we have folks of this magnitude on the broadcast. This is a big, big deal. And in fact, guys, I want to get into some other issues. Will you guys pull me? I know it's somewhere here in my stack today, but I saw some more over the weekend where Google, Facebook, and others are spying on the public for the government. There was an article about the British NSA spying on just workers to stop workplace violence. Oh, we've got to spy on you all without warrants and violate the law so we stop any violence. See, oh, no one, everyone must live in a glass house to stop the violence. GCHQ to snoop through office emails. And we'll go over all of this with William Binney coming up. And then, after he's gone, we'll have open phones yet again. And I want to ask the listeners, what do we do about the Republican Party and the former President Bush, 1 and 2, 41 and 43, running around saying how much they love Bill Clinton? This blue blood Rockefeller Republican traipsing arrogantly in our faces when there's a political realignment. Can't we get rid of Jeb and Hillary in our political process? Do we have to look at them forever? Do we always have to have these people hanging on, and now they've got their kids all getting ready to run for office or winning office? Just dynasties. That's what North Korea is an imperial hermit monarchy with a toddling, soft, third-generation maggot feeding on tens of millions of people, quite literally. So disconnected from reality, thinks he's cool with Dennis Rodman visiting. This is the madness of turning government over to centralized systems. It is anathema to a free and open society. Truly, truly, a pox on us all. I'm Alex Jones. You can follow us on Twitter at RealAlexJones. See our Facebook and more at Infowars.com. Please remember, they want this shut down. Don't take it for granted. Keep spreading the word. That's why we're reaching more people every day. And I want to salute and thank you all. Stay with us. William Binney, he's just 4 miles from Fort Meade, headquarters of the NSA, where he was the technical leader and director for intelligence with the NSA before becoming a whistleblower in late 2001. After more than 30 years with the agency, Binney has been described as one of the most prolific and best analysts and codebreakers in NSA history. Binney continues to speak out about the NSA's illegal data collection policies and continues interviews in the media regarding his experiences and communications intercepts by government agencies of American citizens. In a legal case, Binney has testified in an affidavit that the NSA is in deliberate violation of the U.S. Constitution. ExposeFacts.org, whistleblower.org, and he's part of the government accountability movement. And we really appreciate him spending so much time with us. This is his, I guess, 5th visit with InfoWars, his 3rd visit on this radio show. Remember, they would always say the NSA was not spying on American citizens. And talking to a lot of other whistleblowers and people from Wayne Madsen right through, for all intents and purposes, that was the case until 9/11. And Binney's testified to that. Now they're listening and watching and controlling and grabbing almost everything. Now, it's totally illegal. And it's being used politically. They've been spying on Congress. It's just over the top. It's like living in a glass house. But then, oh, the group's doing it. They're totally secretive. So you go to jail for espionage if you go spy on the CIA or NSA. But if they do it, oh, well, it's okay. And I asked Mr. Binney what he wanted to get into first. And it's the fact that the courts have been rubber stamping this. I mean, there won't even be a need for courts soon with all this. And, they've caught with parallel construction, these other agencies like the DEA, creating fake investigations to claim they got evidence one way when they got it illegally another. And then these agencies have all been caught planting evidence physically at the crime lab, at the FBI. We've had the former head of the crime lab on, Dr. Whitehurst, many times. We're getting back on. Haven't been on years, to digital fingerprints being planted. So this is a tool of total social control, in his words, in that London Guardian headline. And William Binney joins us. I want him to get into the biggest threats, the breaking news, how private industry is part of this, ways we can try to stop this. And then I want to open the phones up. We'll give out a hashtag here in a few minutes where you can tweet at Real Alex Jones on Twitter. And you can then send your questions in that I'll also read on air for William Binney. But I'll give the number out coming up in about 20 minutes, and that's your chance. We'd love to hear from you to call in with a quick question or comment for William Binney. Exposefacts.org, whistleblower.org. Again, thank you so much, Mr. Binney, for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've got the floor. Get into what's happening with these judges.
Well, see, it's basically a continuation of what's happened in the Supreme Court. When the government gets boxed into a corner where they're threatened by the test of a constitutionality of any of the programs they're running, they lie to the courts, and the courts are letting them get away with it. For example, in Amnesty International versus Clapper, that case was at the Supreme Court when the Solicitor General lied to the court, saying that, well, if any NSA data was going to be used against an individual, either in court or anywhere else, that the individual would be told so that they could contest the, basically it's the right to contest discovery that is of information that is libelous or otherwise criminal, implying criminal activity on the part of the individual. So, but that was a lie. Nobody had been told. Even when we talked to the President's Civil Liberties Oversight Board several months ago, we talked about that and raised that issue, and they said, well, from now on, all of those, all the people where that data is being used will be told. Well, I mean, that right there, I mean, and we still have no guarantee that anybody anywhere has ever been told. In spite of the fact that they're giving us assurances, how can you trust them? I mean, after what they've been doing, lying to us outright, how can you trust what they're saying? You can't. And so there's no real oversight in government. There's no checks and balances anymore. They don't work. And that's a fundamental problem with our government. Our whole process is failing us. And the courts seem to be going along with it. That is, if I were on the Supreme Court and the Solicitor General did that to me and I found out about it, the first thing I would do would be to reinstate that case back in the court. I mean, after all, you don't permit perjury to let you get rid of a genuine concern of the public. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're allowing perjury by the government to determine what, in fact, is tested in the courts in terms of constitutionality. And that's in my book, that is what treason is all about. You're fundamentally going after the foundations of this government and corrupting it. That, to me, is real treason.
Well, it certainly is treason, and now if they're able to do this, then the sky's the limit. What comes next? I mean, it's just a total overthrow of our system. Please continue. Well,
I mean, that's the whole point. It's a total destruction of any of the rights you thought you had under the Constitution. I mean, it's simply a matter of we no longer have a Constitution. And that's the real problem that I see. I think we need to stand up. I mean, I can't understand why these judges on these courts can actually look themselves in the eye when they shave in the morning. I mean, after all, they know what the law is. They should know. They know the Fourth Amendment says you don't have data. The government doesn't have data on a U.S. citizen unless you state the citizen's name, the data you're after, and also show probable cause of why you're going at it and where you're going to get it. Now, all that, none of that is happening with the hundreds of millions of U.S. citizens that they're collecting data on. None of that's happening.
Sure, and the argument is, well, we're doing this to stop bad guys. But the truth is...
that's a lie, too.
Well, exactly. They're using it to consolidate the takeover. Well, from your expert view, what is it really being used for, sir?
Well, it's being used to set up the way and means to control the population. I mean, I call NSA as a central repository of knowledge on the U.S. citizens and everybody else on the planet, by the way, for the U.S. government, all departments of the U.S. government. So I've been referring to it as the new Stasi agency, because that's exactly what the Stasi did. They had files on everyone, and they had people spying on them right and left. You know, even your neighbors would spy on you. Well, that's what's happening internally in NSA now. They're talking about having people, if you see something, say something. That's the kind of thing they're talking about internally in NSA now. Well, I mean, you know, that's the Stasi in spades. I mean, Tom Drake was over in Germany a year or two ago, and he met up with an older German couple, and they said to him, well, you know, we the Germans, we are a post-fascist state, and we know it. But you are in fact a pre-fascist state and don't even know that. So, I mean, the point is we have to wake up here.
What do you do, though, when you're faced with true tyranny? This is classical tyranny, not just with the warrantless, ubiquitous, omnipresent spy grid, but the fact that major corporations have lined up to seamlessly Trojan horse surveillance into every device, into our cars, tax by the miles coming out, all the smart meters spying, all the new appliances, with the former CIA director bragging that your washing machine, will listen to you. This is already going on, and it's becoming ubiquitous, and then it's being used illegally, and it's being used to rig markets, rig the stock market. I mean, this is really a 21st century takeover.
Yes, it is. And that's something that we need to all stand up and object to. I mean, if we don't, it's going to happen to us. If you don't stand up, it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Well, if you don't become the squeaky wheel, you don't get satisfaction anywhere. Certainly not in our. You can't really call what we have now a clear democracy, because after all, it's more like a police state.
William Binney, former director and leader for intelligence with the NSA, joins us, the biggest whistleblower in NSA history, hands down. But he's just giving you the general view, none of the classified stuff here. They've tried to put him in jail. We'll talk some about that. We'll also get his view on what he thinks the culture's like inside these agencies that are illegally doing it. What's the morale like at the NSA and beyond with William Binney? I'm Alex Jones. Stay with us. William Binney, former technical director of the National Security Agency, basically a number 2, 3, or 4 position, depending on how you look at it, a major director of the NSA, here with us today. So there are good people from the system telling the truth. In fact, there are so many, but mainstream media tries to ignore them or vilify them or demonize them. I want to talk about the morale at the NSA. Listeners can tweet at hashtag NSA Insider, capitalize NSA and then lower caps Insider, hashtag NSA Insider for your questions. Those are coming up in the next segment. Toll-free number to join us, 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. Your chance to talk to a very honorable person, in my view, who has a lot of courage and sacrificed their career to try to defend our republic, and who worked at the NSA trying to defend us from foreign enemies, which is what it was set up for. William, what about the morale at the NSA from your view? And what about your former colleagues? What are they saying to you, A? And then B, tell folks a little bit about the persecution you've gone through, just to understand the level of tyranny we're dealing with.
Well, I think I don't talk directly to anybody that works at NSA still, simply because if I did, I'm a target. I have been for quite a while, so they would, of course, be targeted by the FBI and interrogated by FBI and internal security at NSA. So I don't do that to them. But I know that they've instituted programs that get agency employees to spy on one another, which simply means that it's just like East Germany. I mean, you've got your neighbors are spying on you, and here it's your neighbors you're working with and trying to do the job. That's a very hostile environment. No one could. You're basically shaking the trust of individuals that trying to do a job internally in the government. I mean, that makes a very unhealthy atmosphere to work in. I mean, that's simply unproductive. It destroys initiative and so on, because nobody wants to do anything for fear that somebody will think it's something wrong, and so they'll get informed on and be interrogated. That's the way it was in East Germany. That's why their whole society stagnated. So that's a real counterproductive process for them to set up. And I know internally that people who have retired from NSA come through the retirement chain. We get the word back from them saying basically that there's an awful lot of people there who are kind of upset at what they're doing at spying on domestically, and so but they're so afraid to do anything because they've looked at what they've done to us, which gets into your follow-on point there. They in order to try to silence anybody from objecting internally in NSA, what they did was they threatened us with persecution and up to 35 years in jail, using the 1917 Espionage Act. Which we at that time we were all staying at the point. The only one who was outside the government complaining about it was Tom Drake, and he was talking to the Baltimore Sun, but he didn't release anything classified, and that was agreed to by the government in court. So they were really coming after us just to shut us down from exposing the corruption, fraud, waste, abuse that was going on as well as all of the unconstitutional activity. So, and they use the FBI first to raid us and take all our property and threaten us with guns. Some of us directly, the follow-on was the Department of Justice used all of their power to try to indict us and put us in jail, so that we would be out of sight and out of mind permanently, so to speak.
Literal political prisoners.
Yep.
And of course, describe. You talk about being raided at gunpoint. What was that like?
Well, it's kind of it's really strange to be coming out of your shower in the morning and have somebody pointing a gun at you, so you look at the end of a barrel of a pistol as you're coming out of the shower, having no idea why they're doing this to you. I mean, after all, we were trying to work within the government all the way up to then, but they just didn't want us doing it, that's all. It was just too embarrassing. They didn't want anybody in government to know what they were doing, and that's important, too, because that gets back to checks and balances. Now, if that's the case, how can any part of government check any other part of government? They can't. That's
right. You're doing your job as one of the top code breakers in history, running the NSA. You leave honorably, try to work to the government, and then their answer is to send a SWAT team to your house to intimidate you. If this isn't oppression, I don't know what is. But the good news is it's coming out. William Binney's our guest. Your questions from Twitter at Real Alex Jones and your phone calls straight ahead. Long segment coming up. What an incredibly honorable, good man. We need more like him, don't we? Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. We're going to go back to William Binney. I've got a bunch of Twitter questions from Real Alex Jones at hashtag NSA Insider and loaded phone lines with Michael, Peter, Dominic, Julio, Joseph, and many others that are patiently holding. Before we go back to our guest, please remember we are not funded like a lot of mainstream media through government bailouts and banker bailouts or NPR, getting taxpayer money. We're funded by listeners like you, supporting our local AM and FM affiliates, spreading the word, supporting our sponsors, and we self-fund selling high-quality, pro-liberty, made-in-America apparel, Molon Labe, come and take it, back in stock, the long-sleeve camo that is so popular, though some sizes are already selling out again. If you order the high-quality supplements, the new Molon Labe Collector Edition silver coins, only 500 of them, you get a free lapel pin. The nickel and also brass come and take it Molon Labe belt buckles. All of this is now available at InfoWarsStore.com or 888-253-3139. And again, if you order by the 17th, we guarantee shipping in the lower 48. If you order this week, we can get it to you basically anywhere in the world where UPS or USPS ships, or to Alaska or Hawaii. But get your Christmas or holiday orders in, and these are high-quality products, whether it's a Molon Labe ball cap or high-quality silver bullet colloidal silver, or whether it's the nascent high-quality iodine that so many people are deficient in. It's all available at InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or 888-253-3139. But get the Molon Labe belt buckles and silver coins while you can, because these are all limited edition, 500 each, and once it sells out, we never sell them again. We've already had one series of Molon Labe belt buckles. This is the second series. We'll have one more, and then that will be it for at least a couple years before we even have a new design. Like I said, we had the Joker shirt and would bring it back. Never did. Okay, enough of that. William Binney, I want to go to these calls. I want to have you be able to speak to any topic you wish, but to imagine you with all these commendations and medals you have, called by Nightline and other operations, one of the most successful code breakers and scientists ever, helping defend this country against the Soviets and terror groups and many others. What is it like when you got raided? Go back to that and describe the persecution that goes on when you weren't even going public at that time to try to basically imply that you were a bad guy so they could disappear you down the road. I mean, if they can get William Binney, they can go after anybody. And then I want to get your view on Snowden. And he says that a revelation's coming out that would bring down the political system. Or he said, be careful, I have a revelation that would bring you down. Well, what type of revelation could that be, William Binney?
Well, he may simply be talking about, like, for example, CIA was spying on Feinstein's intelligence committee when they were preparing that report, on terror. The report she's trying to get out here recently. I think if they look a little closer, they'll find out that spying is much more extensive than they even think. So in other words, I think if they look fairly closely, I mean, Russ Tice has said this for several years now, that they have been spying on senators, House of Representatives, judges of the Supreme Court, even in the White House, and also generals and other federal judges and so on. So they're spying. The spying network that we've created inside this country is actually spying on the leadership of this country, the ones that have power over them, so that they know what their position is and can adjust accordingly, and prepare for it. So that's what they're doing. I mean, they're spying on everybody, our leadership in this country as well as everybody else on the planet. So this is an uncontrollable. These are uncontrollable agencies. They have no way of verifying anything they're doing, and they let them continue that way, when in fact they should all stand up. The problem is, you don't know, and they don't know, the House of Representatives and senators, they don't know what kind of evidence the intelligence community has accumulated about them and their activities. Is it something like J. Edgar Hoover had over the entire Congress? He used that power it was actually, the power he had wasn't that he may not have known anything about you, but you may think he did, and that gave him power over you. So, but he certainly knew a lot about the leadership in Washington.
Well, we also know those files were a form of internal governmental defamation and slander and libel, because they were also filled with disinformation and garbage, and that goes to my next question. What about the problem of planted data through the system? I mean, we know that goes on.
Well, I mean, yes, that plus in our case, at least in the cases that we had, we knew they were fabricating data. Like, and in Tom Drake's case, when they indicted him, the data that they had there was fabricated. It was retroactively classified, and then he was charged with having classified material. Well, I mean, that's like framing him. I mean, that's a felony, and these people should go to jail for that. Even Thomas Tam, back in 2003, when he was the lawyer in the Department of Justice that was the source of the New York Times article on warrantless wiretapping. And when he was his job at the Department of Justice was to prepare the warrant request for the FISA court, the secret court. And so when he was going through that, he was discovering that they had wiretaps already on people that they hadn't gone through the FISA court to get. Well, that by definition or by law at the time was a violation. That was a federal felony. In other words, if you didn't have a FISA approved warrant to get a wiretap on a U.S. citizen for the intelligence community, then you in fact were committing a federal felony, and they were doing that by the thousands. And
never got in trouble.
They never got in trouble. No.
Wasn't that really part of a larger parallel construction where they only go get the warrant later once they want to go back and claim that they got the information with a warrant?
Yeah, that was all part of that, and that had been going on since at least 2001, since after 9/11. Director Mueller of the FBI said they were using that program, Stellar Wind, which is the domestic spying program. He said they were using it since 9/11 in 2001, which is October, which is when they created the name Stellar Wind.
William Binney, top NSA whistleblower, is our guest. I mean, I'm just a layperson, but correct me if I'm wrong. When you start snooping on everybody, you create giant troughs of information that could be stolen, hacked, or taken. B, you're focusing on so much that you miss the real threats that are specific and can be tracked and focused in on. So you blind yourself in a way, having too much data. It's like having a billion phone messages. You can't listen to any of them, basically. And then C, and I think this is probably the most important, it creates a whole system of blackmail domestically and will convert you to a tyranny. So it's like suicide. I mean, what did Congress think? It's already come out for decades. They use the NSA, the British NSA, GCHQ, to spy on Parliament. And now they're using all this data on each other. And it just, I mean, why would the political elite create such a thing and think that they could control it?
That's exactly right. And the point is that what it means is you're giving all this knowledge and power to a set of individuals that aren't controlled, and they're sooner or later they use it. I mean, that's just human nature to have that happen. So I mean, it's only a matter of time like you say, as to how long it's going to take them to take advantage of all the data they've gotten. So, I mean, it's just a very bad situation and a very bad path that we've chosen to take here, down the dark side with Dick Cheney.
Sometimes you got to work on the dark side, to quote Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
In fact, guys, find that clip if you can. Well, that's what's so crazy about this. Information's power, and they've taught so many people in public school and in colleges and TV that, oh, if you don't have anything to hide, don't worry about it. Well, why not have a glass house? Why not leave your codes to your computer out publicly? No. We all know that bad people will take advantage of that information. Well, it's the same thing with government or corporations. What about corporations? I see them almost as a bigger threat now because they're all in a race with government to be the ultimate spy. I mean, isn't Google really the ultimate spy in the final equation?
I think part of the problem with their mining of Gmail is getting close to what the government's doing. But they don't have the resources. See, part of the problem is that Google doesn't have all the data access that the NSA does, for example. NSA can get into any business activity like banking or travel or anything like that, and Google doesn't really have access to all of that. It also doesn't have access to all the emails. They have a good number, but they don't have all of them. And they don't also have the cooperation of other companies around the world and corporations to give them the wiretaps to get the transactional relationships between people. Not all of it anyway. I mean, they certainly have a great deal of it, but it's not to the degree that government is.
So plus, government brings it all together and in the darkness binds it.
Right. Yeah. And the point is that Google doesn't, and companies do not have the power that government does when it comes to arresting people or putting them in jail or fabricating evidence or framing them like they've tried to do to us. So, I mean, there's quite a bit of difference between government and at least in terms of power and capability.
I want to go to some phone calls for William Binney here and also go through this huge list of Twitter questions that we have. Let's go ahead and talk to Joseph in Texas. Joseph, you're on the air with William Binney.
Hi. I wanted to call in and talk to you guys about. I'm a hairdresser in Dallas, and I had a client for a little while this year who was he was the VP for the manufacturer that created the NSA center in Utah, and he gave me a lot of he told me as much as I guess he could about when they were building it and about this data center. And I also have another friend of mine who just recently met. He works with AT&T on the neural networks collecting the data. So I wanted to ask some questions and just see if I could get an answer from him. I was basically told just that the NSA data center, that they were spying on, everything from our cell phones to our banks, to everything, connecting it all. And after I heard that, I actually heard a documentary with, from it was like the Operation Stellar Wind documentary, and so I just wanted to hear about that.
Mr. Binney?
Yeah, that's the whole point of why they had to build Bluffdale with all that storage. I mean, it wasn't for metadata; it was for content of communications. Like all of your emails and phone conversation recordings and transcripts and things like that. I mean, the point is, if you wanted to put together all of the relationships of everybody in the world on metadata relationships and build those kind of what they're called graphs or simply social networks of everybody in every domain, phone calls, emails, banking, all of that, then you could do that and store it in a room 20 foot by 40 foot. That's all it would take to store all of the relationships and all the domains of everybody in the world. So, and you could keep it there for, 50 years perhaps, something like that. And so the real point was the hundreds of thousands of square feet of storage was needed for the content, and that's where the bulk of data is. That's where the bulk of information is, and that's what takes an awful lot of storage up. The rest of it is not doesn't take that much storage.
That's right. In Utah and Texas, that's a key point. When they lie and say we're just keeping metadata, they consider everything to be metadata. It's a lawyer's game they're playing. Thank you, Joseph. Let's go ahead and take another call. Let's talk to Dominique in California. You're on the air.
Hey there, William. I got a question about who they're kind of watching now. I videotaped a jet laying some geoengineering trails out the other day, and some webs started falling from the trail, and I got it all on tape, and I got a lot of samples of these webs falling from the sky. And my question is, are they monitoring geoengineering activists such as myself? Because I've been telling a lot of people about this, and trying to get the word out there. And I'm kind of getting a little worried.
Well, I don't think you heard him. Everything's being recorded and monitored, and now I don't think they mind that it's out as a chilling effect. It's illegal what they're doing. We need to stop it, but it doesn't intimidate me and doesn't shut down my speech. William Binney, do you have any information? Thank you, Dominic. Do you have any information on geoengineering, climate manipulation?
Well, I would think that that's one of the things they're certainly monitoring all kinds of research done around the world. For example, one of the best ways to find out who's working on quantum computing is to, for example, go to a quantum computing conference around the world and just go around and collect business cards. And you find that sets up a community, and then you work the transactional relationships you're getting across the network to build their social network of who they're working with to work on quantum computing. And I'm sure they would do the same thing for any kind of climate alterations and so on. I mean, any kind of serious research that's going on that would have implications on a wider scale, they certainly would be monitoring just to watch to make sure they knew what was happening.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Julio in Wyoming.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you all. It's funny, Mr. Binney, you mentioned about collecting business cards and going to those conferences, that caller that mentioned geoengineering. That's what I've done, Mr. Binney. I've gone to these conferences, collected business cards, spoke to people in geoengineering, and I agree people need to do that. I want to mention this document briefly before I get to my question. I think it's cute. The NSA is trying to attract children through their Change the World program, which includes solving fun puzzles and exploring the world of cryptology. I think that's kind of cute with the Change the World program. You mentioned about blackmail. It's quite clear bureaucracies and totalitarian agencies like the NSA are using blackmail to their advantage. My question is, how deep does that rabbit hole go? And I spoke to someone who's a contractor in Colorado Springs last week who told me there's a lot of movement from these types of agencies moving towards Colorado Springs and other parts of the
Sure, that's where the alternate government's based. Thank you for the call. That's a lot of questions there. But blackmail, you already spoke to that, but what else can you tell us about blackmail, William Binney?
Well, the problem, of course, is that once you have all that data, that's the power that data gives you. I mean, if you have information like, let me use an example. I was on the Elliot Spitzer show on Current TV when he was on the show there, and he was at. I mean, he never told me this, but I've been inferenced to him. He was after the bankers after the 2008 banking fiasco, and a lot of people lost a lot of money there, and that was because of fraudulent solicitations by the banks passing around packaged mortgage groups and things like that, and so he was going after them criminally. He was, I think, the governor of New York State at the time, and as a part of that, all of a sudden the FBI was going through all of his emails and his my financial transactions and so on, and they found where he was engaged with a prostitute, and they used that to get rid of him. So the point is that the FBI didn't even show probable cause as to why they were doing it. The probable cause was they wanted him stopping. They didn't want him criminally prosecuting the bankers in Wall Street. That's what the whole motive was. And so the people who did that, I mean, Mueller was the director of FBI at the time, and Alexander was the director of NSA. So the FBI went into the database of emails that Mueller had testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee that he had access to. Back in the 30th of March of 2011, he testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee that he had access to this database where he could make a query and get all past and all future emails as they came in on a person. Well, I mean, when the FBI goes into all those back emails, I mean, looking at data, for example, against Elliot Spitzer to get rid of him, then they were the ones who helped the bankers out to keep them out of trouble. So then you have Mueller and Alexander after they retire, and they're selling their expertise in cybersecurity. And who are they selling it to at the rate of $600,000 a month or something like that? Originally, they started at $1 million, but now they're selling that to, I believe, the last I heard, it was the bankers. Well, to me, that's when I took contract law into government. I mean, one of the first things you made sure you did not do was to give the appearance of a conflict of interest. Now, that sure smells like a conflict of interest.
Sure, you've got a select group of banks that control the Federal Reserve that already issue and control the currency. Now they're using the NSA that they helped government build to domestically target everybody, steal data, corner the markets, and just take everything over.
And get rid of people who are trying to hold you accountable.
It's a criminal takeover. There's no debating it. Right. Zach Tamount asks, that's his Twitter name, ask William Binney, what does Mr. Binney think about people waking up to spying, but also the smart TVs that, for those that don't know, Samsung admits that they, quote, record what you say in your house and send it to third parties for, quote, marketing. What do you think of just the mainlining of total spying?
I mean, for me, that is an intrusion, and an unauthorized intrusion, and it's a felony, and they should be charged criminally with it.
Kavik on Twitter asks, how closely does Canada's CSE work with the NSA, or is it more a data-sharing agreement?
Actually, this has been documented. It's in some of the documentation that Snowden had provided and has been published. They are basically it's an outgrowth of the World War II effort of the English-speaking countries. That's the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, the U.S. is called first party, and the other four are called second party. That was the closest relationship in history in World War II. They worked together jointly on breaking Enigma codes and also the Japanese Purple Code and the JN-25 Naval Code. And those relationships only expanded from there, and the cooperation has been very close. It's the closest cooperating group of countries in the world.
Mikhail Thalen, Infowars.com writer, at Mikhail Thalen on Twitter, asks, others have mentioned power struggle between the NSA and other intel groups, such as the CIA. Can you expand on that? Hashtag NSA Insider.
Yeah, there always was. I mean, even before 9/11, I mean, that was part of I think the 9/11 Commission's report was they need to work a little closer and be a little less rivalry, kind of. They reduce the rivalry. The point is that there are certain charters that these agencies have, like the CIA's to do HUMINT, the NSA's to do SIGINT, Signals Intelligence, and they jealously guard their charters. And if they come up with information in their areas, that's like knowledge they have that they can directly provide to senior leadership, the president, and so on for decision making. So that makes them that gives them the sense that they have greater influence in the government and what it does and what the president would decide to do by being able to control or to have the most significant intelligence information to present. So that creates a rivalry between the agencies, and that's been going on for decades. I mean, that's nothing new. The CIA does it, NSA does it, they all do it. So to a certain degree, and that was part of the problem that the 9/11 Commission found.
Sure.
So yeah, that's certainly an issue. A rivalry between these agencies is one that is a fundamental flaw, or it destroys some of the capabilities that they should have in terms of sharing knowledge, so that everybody can be leveraging the same set of information.
William Binney, we have another question for you from Twitter. F.W. Partica asks, how would you change the NSA so it would be a positive department? First of all, I mean, we submitted 21 recommendations to the President of the United States in January this year. It's an open letter. It's on the web. And those recommendations, the two primary points in those recommendations, one was to force NSA to make a directed selection of information on known targets and things in a zone of suspicion defined around it. So that would mean that they would only pull in maybe they would let 99.99999% of the data pass by and only pull out and store that data that was relevant to targets that they were after. And I'm going to blow up the Eiffel Tower. That would be grabbed. That would focus them in on their targets, and that would make a rich environment for their analysts to succeed. And we would actually be able to stop things like the Boston bombing or even 9/11. I mean, they had all the data to stop 9/11. They just couldn't. William, you've been so gracious giving us 50-something minutes. Let me talk to you during this break and see if you can stay a little bit longer to finish that statement and take a few more calls. I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you stay with us? Yeah, sure I can. Unbelievable. Third hour coming up with the top NSA whistleblower.
go sort of the dark side, if you will. We're going to spend time in the shadows and in the intelligence world. A lot of what needs to be done here will have to be done quietly, without any discussion, using sources and methods that are available to our intelligence agencies, if we're going to be successful. That's the world these folks operate in, and so it's going to be vital for us to use any means at our disposal, basically, to achieve our objective.
And now Al-Qaeda is bigger than it's ever been, and it's renamed ISIS, and our own government funded it. And William Binney was beginning to get into 9/11, and I've had Colonel Schaefer on, I've had Seabell Edmonds on, I've had the translators, the colonels. I've had so many angles of this, covering classified and unclassified information and leaked information, that we know they knew about 9/11 and bare minimum stood down. 6 of the 10 commissioners have said that. William Binney, without giving out any classified information, obviously, what can you tell us about 9/11?
Well, it's more like after we left NSA because of the domestic spying. Tom Drake, who was still there working, ran a program we were developing on the entire database in NSA, and he found all the data that was necessary to stop 9/11 in their databases prior to 9/11, which simply meant, very simply put, that they could easily have stopped 9/11 if they were doing smart things. But what was driving them at the time? Well, it was a matter of getting more and more money and building a bigger budget, and that's really what their emphasis was on. So they weren't trying to do smart things. They were trying to do things that would build their empire. And that to me is why I keep saying, every time I give a talk anywhere, I keep saying they traded the security of the people of the United States and of the world for money.
And I guess when you make multi-million-dollar purchases from big tech firms for their supercomputers and fiber optic and cables, and you end up getting nice president jobs a few years later with that revolving door, it just turns into a giant boondoggle.
Yeah, that's that incestuous relationship that exists between government officials and private industry. Yeah, that close relationship building between them so that they can move from one senior executive job in government to a senior executive job in industry.
What do you think about moves to cut off electricity and the water supply in Utah to the data center?
Well, I mean, they could certainly try to do that, but I would think that they would call up the National Guard, nationalize things, and go in and make sure that they could continue to keep the power going. To me, the more important way to attack this problem is to go after them legally by the voting and by getting rid of them and firing their worthless personages from Congress.
Well, you would think that there would be rolling this back with all the lies coming out and that they were deceptive and they're using it against Congress. But instead, like you said, they're just getting the courts lined up to legalize it.
Right, and they're feeling more confident because some of the judges are getting behind them and backing it.
And I think that's through fear as well.
Right. You never know what kind of blackmail they have on those judges because of the collection of data they've got.
The word is that Justice Roberts was being blackmailed on the Obamacare situation.
Yeah, well, that could be. I mean, after all, he changed it from a penalty to a tax, and that's changing the law. And he should have thrown that back to Congress for the Congress to fix that, not the court.
Yeah, the fix is in.
Yeah.
Wow, final segment with William Binney. A ton of Twitter questions and your calls. Michael, Peter, Shane, Anthony, Jay. Your calls straight ahead for William Binney. You can find out his writings and more at exposedfacts.org or whistleblower.org. Stay with us. It's our final segment with top NSA whistleblower William Binney. They tried to charge him, the SWAT team raided him, you name it, when he was just trying to quietly, legally work through the federal government and Congress to try to stop the illegal spying. They instead tried to throw him in prison for it, and many others. It's a testament that we've still got some justice in the court systems, but not much, that he and others have escaped prison. Others haven't. They've been trying to put journalists in jail that talked to somebody at the Defense Department at a press conference about North Korea. And they say, well, we don't want you getting the opinion that we don't think, or we do think they have nukes. We're going to arrest you. I mean, this is really a major power grab. And who would want to do this to our country? Who would want to do this to our children? Who really wants to do this? They are using the NSA and other agencies to target the general public. It's a weird feeling when I went to cover Bilderberg, and they had plainclothes Marines threatening us, flipping us off, pulling dirty tricks on us. And it later came out and was confirmed that their diplomatic security corps was there. They saw us as the enemy. They had been trained. The Marines, officers all, some of them like 45 years old, to harass peaceful journalists that they knew were peaceful. This is the government we built and paid for being turned against us, and the press is being persecuted. It's clear where this is going. We're not troublemakers up here just saying, oh, come on. It's all been proven. William Binney, before we take some final calls, what do you think hurts the NSA most? Because the fact that they lied and denied they were spying on citizens in non-terror-related cases, and the fact that it's now come out, I mean, is that the biggest blow to the NSA? And where do you think this fight's going?
Actually, I don't think it's, in the long run, I don't think it's been a blow to them. I think they got it to the point where they simply don't care what the public thinks. It's the arrogance of power. Hubris. Yeah, and so I don't think they really care. I mean, the one thing that could really hurt them is cutting their financial money, cutting the budget that they have. That is the thing that would hurt them. That's why they got so nervous about Representatives Amos and Conyers and their coalition group to unfund NSA last July. I mean, I don't think I told you this on the programs before, but I was scheduled to brief that coalition prior to them voting on unfunding NSA. And when they posted that on the congressional record that I was coming down there to testify to them, what happened was that President Obama called a meeting of all the members of the House, all the House Democratic members at the same time. So that basically killed that meeting. And so that was delayed, but we never rescheduled. So they never got, and then they had to vote on it, and they lost the vote because of lobbying by the president and also General Alexander, heavy lobbying to try to stop it. They lost by 12 votes. But that was pretty good from a first cut. I mean, the basic motivation that started all this was the fact that they began to realize that they weren't being told the truth by the intelligence committees or by the agencies or by the White House, so that they were being lied to all along. Because it's illegal. Yes. So simple. Right. Let's talk to Michael in Ohio. You're on the air.
Hi, I think there might have been a mistake there. I'm actually calling from FEMA Region 5, but I just kind of wanted to talk to Mr. Binney about what he thought about the racial divide that they're bringing up to kind of distract us from what's going on with the NSA.
That's a great point. We're all having our rights to privacy taken, and meanwhile, you think the only issue in the world is race. William Binney? It's a standard thing that a dictator does. When you are having internal problems in your country, you create an external threat. So in this case, what they're doing is creating other threats or other conflicts to deflect interest and focus away from core issues that are fundamental to everything we do. Absolutely right about that. Anything else, Michael?
Yeah, I think it's funny that the issues like Ebola and ISIS have also been kind of swept under the rug, and no one wants to focus on that, but they sure want to focus on the race issue of what they want us to focus on. Thank you, Michael. Peter in Washington, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question. I know it's about before your time, but what do you think of Alan Dulles? Do you know anything about or heard anything about him with regard to whether he was not so bad or really bad and so forth?
No, I didn't know anything about him or his when he was in office. I wasn't aware of what he was doing. So.
All right, Peter, appreciate your call.
I never heard anything since then. So.
Let's talk to Anthony in Florida. You're on the air.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I got a question for Mr. Binney. Has it been possible, like for a long time, that the NSA has the capability and technology to actually watch, for example, somebody walking down in a street, or, like what do you call that?
Well, sir, let me tell you, since you're hesitating, They have satellites with infrared, other things can track people in real time. They're tied into a lot of the cameras nationwide that have face scanning software on them. That's all admitted. They're getting ready to get attacks by the mile using these systems. What is your specific question?
Oh, like the NSA for a long time has it had the capability to actually see people even before the
Yes, and for decades, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
It certainly is. Elaborate on that, Mr. Binney.
Well, I mean, it's like the overhead photography, that kind of thing. You've seen those pictures. I mean, you can see that they've had that capability for decades. I mean, that's how you watch things on the Earth. That's how the photo interpreters are at the National Photographic Centers. National Center. It used to be called NPIC. I can't remember what it was called right now. But there's another agency that handles photography. Yeah, they've been doing that for decades.
And Space Command and all of it.
Yeah,
but they couldn't see for 2 weeks Al-Qaeda, renamed ISIS, pouring in out of Syria in long convoys. They couldn't stop that, but they'll go arrest some teenager on Twitter that makes a threat. Don't worry. Don't worry. And did you see the case where supposedly the NSA called a high school to tell the school to start watching one of the kids?
No, I didn't. But, see, this has been my major contention, that the domestic spying, the reason they're doing it is not because of terrorism. It's because it's for law enforcement and internal security, domestic security. That's what they're doing it for. That's the main. That gives them. See, when they look around after 9/11, they had to look around for a customer set. What would be the biggest customer set they could go in for? That would be law enforcement, because it involves local law enforcement, state and federal law enforcement everywhere, as well as all around the world with other law enforcement.
And then you set up threat fusion centers where you slowly see which cops will go along with illegal spying, and then you recruit them in. Last year I was at Barton Springs, a big public natural spring. There were 3 cops, well, 3 male cops and 3 female cops. I think they were all police or in criminal justice. They were all laying out, talking about how they were going back to get more courses because 2 of them already worked at the NSA Center in San Antonio, and all the rest of them wanted jobs there, and how great it was and how powerful they were. And that's what's crazy. It's how these people just brag about what they're involved in and are just so undisciplined on top of it. It's just really pathetic.
And then back last year in August, I think it was, Reuters published that article about parallel construction, and they did an interview with one of the federal agents involved in in looking at the NSA data and doing parallel constructions and things like that. And he said, this is such a great program. I just hope we can keep it secret.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, that's our secret government in operation.
How about I come to their house and watch them in bed and read their email? No, they'd all freak out. These people are sick. I mean, something's wrong with them. Unbelievable. Let's talk to Shane in Michigan. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Mr. Binney, you mentioned that the NSA might come in with the National Guard to nationalize resources in Utah if that state turns off the water. And my question is, does this mean that the NSA is, in fact, reliant on resources that are provided at the state and local levels, and that if we can't get the Congress to do anything, this might be a last-ditch effort to put a chokehold on them and stop what they're doing?
Yeah, but I would not advocate that. I mean, I would advocate hitting your state and local government employees and making sure that they stand up and resist this, and also hit all your people, representatives in Congress. And then if they don't start going along, we need to have a unified effort to fire them, get rid of them.
That's right. I mean, I'm not normally for just standard civil disobedience, and I agree with what Mr. Binney's saying in general, but the state triggering a constitutional crisis, blocking water, cutting off electricity, force the National Guard in to restore the water and the power, to draw attention to it. I think these are the type of stunts we need to start seeing be pulled.
I think the state government could do that, but I wouldn't advocate individuals take action.
Oh, absolutely not. No. We don't want to be put on a terrorist list.
Yeah.
And they'll call it terrorism. In fact, they might even bomb themselves to look like victims, false flags. The sky's the limit. But this has gone too far. It is time to have state governments peacefully start moving with injunctions, and kind of like Texas is suing over Obamacare with 17 other states.
Yeah, right.
It's time to say no.
Or like I think we talked about in an earlier program, they could have a constitutional convention where the states would hold it and keep everybody in D.C. out of it, and then modify the Constitution and operate from that basis.
Is it fair to say we now have a rogue federal government?
Yes. In my view, that's exactly what we have.
Yeah, it's like you come back from being on vacation, your employees have changed the locks, they're telling you that it's their business, their house, and they have no legal standing, but they got a bunch of guns.
Yep.
And they're just staring at us, telling us we're terrorists, and then we don't confront them. We go home and try to figure out how to be peaceful, and then they send a SWAT team to our home and get us out of the shower.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That's what happened to you. I mean, it's just it's craziness. And
yes,
you know,
it is.
now John Corzine and Goldman Sachs can take billions out of bank accounts and not give it back, and MF Global, and nobody gets in trouble. I mean, it's just we're in trouble, people. They are out of control. And historically, that means they'll just power grab until everything starts collapsing. Jay in California, only got a few minutes left with our guest. Jay, thanks for calling. You're on the air with William Binney.
Yeah, I'll be real brief. Mr. Binney, I just have to dish out a little bit of gratitude to yourself and obviously Alex Jones for bringing up this kind of stuff in this media operation for years and exposing kind of what's going on. And now it seems that it's an agreement, it's the consensus among the public in this republic that we're being spied on illegally, that these judges are being, basically with inside baseball blackmailed into changing laws and the rest of it. And I was just curious what you would advise people, and I know I'm not asking just for myself, I'm asking on behalf of others that I talk to that don't feel that this world government, as we can all agree it's a world government, we don't believe it can be put back together, that Humpty Dumpty is broken and can't be put back together again. What would you say about that?
Well, I would say that there are ways, we have some ways to try to help save and salvage our country. And one of the primary ways is to get active in politics and stand up and make sure if you're going to elect somebody as a representative, that they stand up and defend the Constitution and the founding principles of this country. That's something that the current crop of people we have down there in Washington aren't doing right now. They're violating every way they possibly can. And they're getting everybody they possibly can to support what they're doing and cover up for them.
That's right. They're circling the wagons to use the whistleblowers and the political awakening as a way to actually legitimize this giant usurpation of our basic freedoms. And if we don't start backing them off at this point, the sky's the limit. We've already basically reached the sky. We're now going out into outer space. A few final calls, and we're going to let our gracious guests go. Mike in Wyoming, you're on the air worldwide.
Hi, Mr. Binney. My recollection is that Harry Truman created NSA just with a stroke of his pen, that Congress never actually created that agency by statute. Why is it entitled to funding in the first place?
That's correct. But the funding comes out of the Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense slices out a set of funding for them. But it's under, since the FISA laws, they now have committees overseeing them and overseeing their budgets. But those committees have been basically usurped and are basically advocates for these agencies. And they tend to support them no matter what, which means that their committees get to manage larger budgets as the agencies themselves grow. So from their perspective, they look at that as a positive contribution, when in fact they should be standing up for our rights and stopping these people under the FISA law alone. That was the reason the Church Committee said. That's what the Church Committee came up with. That's what they said, and this is how we're going to try to set up checks and balances. Well, those checks and balances over time have proven to just outright fail. They're non-existent now. I mean, the FISA courts are rubber stamped. The intelligence committees are advocates for the agencies to do domestic spying, when in fact they were created. Their founding principles for the creation of those were to prevent spying agencies in the United States from spying on United States citizens domestically. And that they've totally failed at.
It is a criminal Big Brother revolution by bureaucrats and corporate and government interest to openly execute fraud upon us until it becomes common law precedent. And it is just over the top. They're getting away with it. Mike, anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, we are basically out of time with our guest, William Binney. We've got Chris, John, Truth Raider, Frank, and many others holding. I'll try to answer your questions as best I can. Mr. Binney, people constantly say, where are the whistleblowers? Where are good people in government, good people in corporations? Well, whether it's John Perkins, who was an economic hitman for big banks, or whether it's Colonel Schaefer or General Benton K. Parton, or countless other people we have had on this broadcast, Tosh Plumley, Sully Castile, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, Terry Reid. It's got to be over 1,000 now. Whistleblowers from state, federal, international level. Wolfgang Wodarg, the head of the EU vaccine program, admitting the vaccines are tainted. I mean, the truth is, we actually have more people in major corporations and governments that do go public, and then the public doesn't get behind them or listens to mainstream media demonizing them, to the point of now where they're arresting and persecuting the press, not just people that internally blew the whistle and gave up your career heading up a major agency. I mean, it's just, I think it's the immorality and the laziness of the American people that at the end of the day is allowing this. I don't think we are the progenitors of it, but we're the people that allow it. And as Eric Hoffer said, propaganda does not deceive people. It merely helps them deceive themselves. And men have to ask, do they really only want Sports Center and fantasy football over a free country and a future? Do women only want to go out and party and act like tarts? Or do they want to have a future for their children? Because we're going into bondage. This is only the beginning. We can see the fruits of this tyranny as our country and the world goes down the drain. They've started a global spy race now. So who knows what's going to come out of this? It's destabilizing our world. It's discrediting our country. It's discrediting our tech companies because people don't want to do business with us. I'm kind of ranting here at the end. It's just, why are we allowing this to happen? It is so insane. Final comment.
Well, yeah, you're pointing out some of the very short-sighted, finite thinking that people went through when they first decided to do these kinds of things. And I start with Cheney and his dark side business. Instead of focusing on doing the intelligence business and the military business in a focused, disciplined way, he went on a scatter approach. Let's go after everything and do everything we possibly can to ensure we get information. Well, I mean, it's been shown for a long time by any numbers of studies and examples, testimony from various people that torture doesn't work, and if you torture people, they'll tell you anything you want them to tell you. And so what that means is you need to do a disciplined approach, and I think the FBI had at one point anyway, they were thinking that torture was not the way to go either, and that there were other ways to get information and get it reliably. And certainly we knew from the SIGINT business that was true, and they went down a very bad path there. They went down a very bad path everywhere. I think the dark side is just a bad path. That's all.
Well, sir, you are a modern hero. You have gone through hell, lost your lucrative job, done so many other things to warn us. You raised the alarm as a modern Paul Revere, and now it's up to us to try to carry the ball. But I appreciate you working so hard and still going through the persecution. I hope you write a book. Now we know about all the illegal spying, but just write a book about your experiences. They can't stop you from writing about the persecution you've gone through. Really, I see it as a modern jungle. Just like the jungle exposed child labor and the Rockefeller factories, I think your book or another big whistleblower book, not so much getting into the spying even, but just the response to it, could be made into a film, you name it, and things like that will turn around our society. William Binney, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, folks, there he goes, an amazing individual. And there's so many of them, and I'll tell you what's humbling about my broadcast. I get to talk to people like that every day, and I get to talk to you. And sometimes I get frustrated, sometimes I get rude and mad. It's because this is real for me. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know a lot. And to look at one story, I make all these connections in my mind to other data. It gives me a headache. To look at one article gives me a headache. Like this article, UNICEF calls 2014 one of the worst years on record for the world, New York Times. Why does that give me a headache? I'll tell you when we come back. Why does it make me feel rage? Why does it make me want to cry? I'll tell you when we come back. And we'll continue with your phone calls straight ahead as well. Binney did an hour and a half with us. I skipped 2 network breaks, you name it, because that was such important information. And I hope when the video of this gets posted at Infowars.com tomorrow, I hope it isn't pearls before swine. I hope we get it out to everybody else, because you are the resistance. You are the answer. You are the Paul Reveres. UNICEF calls 2014 one of the worst years on record for world's children. And they go through all over the world. 15 million children starve to death a year. Another 20 million adults. They go through war. 230 million children live in countries and areas riven by armed conflicts. And this is the UN that goes around sterilizing people, goes around engaging in massacres, goes around destabilizing. But every time you're at the shopping mall or something, if a woman looks like she's a model, she's wearing a UNICEF shirt, because that's what models do. Miss America, what do you want to do? I want to help UNICEF help the children. like give your money to the Red Cross and half of it goes to gun control, basically. I'm not against you if you ever helped the Red Cross. What you did was good, but the organization itself is a globalist crime syndicate, in my opinion. Same thing with United Way. But the UN makes them all look like angels. And it says they've been orphaned, kidnapped, tortured, recruited, raped, and even sold as slaves. The same New York Times 2 years ago admitted that the UN in the Congo was going in and killing whole villages of people that wouldn't leave their own ancestral land because they had promised it as a carbon sink under the UN. Oh, you can have mines over here for big corporations, but there has to be an offset now. This land can't have people on it, so we're going to force you off. I mean, I remember, it had to be like 1998. If somebody's got National Geographic you saved, find it for me. It was like 98 because I covered it on air a bunch, maybe 99. It was articles about Burma and a couple of places about UN buffer zones in those countries, and it showed UN troops, and it said they shoot anyone trying to come in, period. And how they'd run people off their ancestral lands there. I mean, I know that's on record they did that. The UN reportedly killed tens of thousands in Burma alone. But there it was in an article about how good it was, with liberals reading it. So, see, I see an article where the UN's trying to save the kids again. Remember, Prince Bernhard founded the World Wildlife Fund. The other cause celeb thing of every young college girl. He used it on record as a front, look it up, for running giant poaching operations in Africa. You know how much you can get for all that ivory and stuff, especially in China where they grind it up and eat it as a medicinal, for tiger claws and all the rest of it. Last time I heard, I think a tiger claw is something like $5,000 a gram or something ridiculous. The point is that it'd be like Count Dracula running a blood bank. It's just the USO. That's how you pronounce it, right? What's the group they set up during World War II where the celebrities go play for the troops? Yeah, great organization. Does a lot of great stuff. Bob Hope, whole 9 yards. Nothing against, entertainment for the troops or whatever. But it was founded by George Herbert Walker Bush, his dad, Prescott Bush, when he was about to be indicted by the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, basically, for being the main Nazi collaborator. So he comes out with a thing for the troops. That's the thing about knowing history, is that it's so frustrating. You see one article like this, and then it makes you think of all the stuff they're doing. And it's always irritating to see the very people involved in all this, evil, posing as the good guys. Here's another one on the New York Times. Bush and CIA ex-officials rebut torture report. The new Senate report, that's a whitewash, admits the torture. The Democrats are just trying to score some political points. That's why the CIA was spying on them illegally. But it doesn't make Dianne Feinstein good that she's being spied on. See, it's just a ship of rats fighting with each other. But the issue here is, back when they thought they had America eaten out of their hand, they admitted torture on television. Why, Jack Bauer tortured every night on 24. He was always right. He was a good guy. But they didn't torture somebody like, give us, you capture a code expert who knows how the German code works. Show us how this machine works. We're going to start chopping your fingers off. And what really works is, we're going to hunt your kids down in Germany and kill them. We've got hit teams inside your country right now if you don't tell us. That's bad enough, but that would work sometimes in an absolute emergency situation where you know what you're going after. And I'm against torture. But the claims that torture doesn't work, it's not really completely true. What it really works for, though, is false confessions and to flip people over to be double agents to do whatever you want. That's what torture is really all about. And it's what tyrants do, and upright countries don't do it. George Washington, if he caught his troops torturing, because the British troops would torture to get intel, he would hang you. Look it up. And you know why he'd hang you? Because he wanted the moral high ground. If you got caught raping a woman, George Washington would hang you. And foreign generals from Germany and others came over here and really admired the colonial army because it didn't engage in war crimes, and everybody else did. And that's one reason they ended up winning the public support and winning the war, because there was a moral high ground that had to be attained. George Washington wasn't a wimp because he didn't torture, and he didn't rape, and didn't loot. He knew he had to have the moral high ground. Now, he did sit down every morning and sign death warrants on traitors that were working with the British who would be assassinated. That's not torture. So that's the difference, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a guarantee that we're going to Hades in a handbasket with all the garbage that's going on. And I've got 3 children, and I love them, and I want them to have a future with your children. And that's why we got to turn this around. Now, there's a story up on drudgereport.com. We also have it up on Infowars.com. I'm going to tweet it out at Real Alex Jones. And Compton on Obama. He launched profanity-laced tirades against the press. According to ABC News journalist Ann Compton, Barack Obama launched a profanity-laced tirades against the press in an off-the-record meeting with reporters. Yeah, I've been watching Obama. He used to seem real slick and happy and kind of bebopping as a narcissist. He looks really upset now. Now he has acid reflux and all this stuff. In a C-SPAN interview, Compton also derided the president for leading the most opaque, that means hard to see through, administration of any I have covered. And this is just the degeneration of government. It's going to get worse and worse. The journalist who retired in August after a 40-year career revealed to C-SPAN's Brian Lamb, I have seen in the last year Obama really angry twice. Both were off-the-record times. I got a question. What is she doing bringing up an off-the-record discussion? I don't like Obama. But if it's not a crime he's committing, you don't bring up an off-the-record discussion. See, these journalists are a pack of rats. They're just as bad or worse as Obama. They go along with the sellout of the country, and then when they retire, they dish dirt on people that gave them confidence. Let's go ahead and play the clip. Here it is.
I have seen in the last year Barack Obama really angry twice. Both were off the record times. One profanity-laced, where he thought the press was making too much of scandals that he didn't think were scandals. Another where he took us to task for not understanding the limits he has with foreign policy and the way he's dealing with the Middle East and Iraq and Afghanistan. And I don't find him apologetic, but I find him willing to stand up to the press and look him in the eye, even though it was off the record, and just give us hell.
And this is all about how the press is in a fight with him and how she was there and she's not going to let him boss her around. All about her. Do you understand, folks? She was in an off-the-record meeting. She's not a journalist. See, I don't claim to be a journalist first and foremost, but if you're in an off-the-record discussion with me, it's that. I don't even tell crew about it. Sometimes I'll have guests during the break start telling me stuff off the record. I go, whoa, 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 whoa. I go, I trust my crew, but this isn't really off the record. You got a bunch of people listening to this. And to watch them, all these swollen people, because they work for mainstream media, acting like, they're sycophantic journalists, and I'm not. I'm a conspiracy theorist. People like this woman couldn't get a William Binney on and have him say exactly right, precisely right. You know why I'm precisely right about the NSA? I've studied it for 20 years. I've interviewed scores of whistleblowers. And I'm just so sick of these sophistic, swollen, dishonorable pieces of trash up there about how they're a big journalist and they're on ABC News. You're a joke! Does she ever say in here why she's opening up about something that's off record? Man, you know why I get mad by her? I'm so sick of telling people something's off the record, and then they go and blabber it everywhere. Because a lot of times you'll tell somebody something off the record to help them or to give them a little tidbit. And in this dishonorable, unchivalrous society, people then take that as, ooh, I better spread this because it's really off the record. Oh, I want to go back to your phone calls. Briefly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank all the listeners for your support. You make the broadcast possible. We have special offerings of collectibles in groups of 200 to 500 that only come around once at made-in-1776.com or InfoWarsStore.com is the main site. You can find it under the Made-in-1776 area. We have bronze and nickel belt buckles, one with an M16 with the Molon Labe with the traditional Texas star. We have the Molon Labe with a Spartan helmet and 2 Cross 50 cals. And again, we've already had one version come out, sold out of those. This is the new version. There's only 500 of each. And there's 500 silver coins that are stamped. In fact, I'm told they're more than double stamped. These are the finest grade coins we could buy. I wanted to put out something really special that's a collectible. And there's only 500 of the Molon Labe. Come and take it. Spartan double-cross swords with 5 spears. This is what you frame and put on the wall. And the purchase supports the broadcast. Just to give you an idea, these coins cost us to make $50 a piece. So there's not much markup there. I mean, these are 1 ounce, 999, whatever, Troy silver. We're very proud of those. The belt buckles are $50 a piece. And they're made in America, forged in America. We bought them in China. You know, we could have gotten them for $10 instead of $20 a piece or $25 a piece. And, you know, doubled our profit. And we do have the camo, long-sleeve Molon Labe back in, the women's Molon Labe back in, InfoWarsStore.com, Maiden1776.com, or 888-253-3139. And we're basically hoping to sell out of all of the Maiden 1776 paraphernalia, Patriot paraphernalia, as the state police in Virginia once on video. It's in my film, Road to Tyranny. They pull a woman over, naval veteran, no criminal record, and they find a pocket constitution in one of my films, and they start hyperventilating, going, this may be illegal. We've come a long way from the state police believing everything the Southern Poverty Law Center tells them to not believing a word they tell them. So please keep spreading the word. All orders, by the way, get free citizen rule books. And so much more. InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com. We still have some great specials running at InfoWarsStore.com. In fact, some of the best of the year. The free shipping's gone and things like that, but now we have Super Detox Special, Fluoride Shield, and 2 X2 Super Nascent Iodines for 46% off. In the Super Detox Special, the Biodefense Pack, Survival Shield X2, and Lung Cleanse, 58% off. And then, by the way, stuff's already selling like hotcakes, but it funds the operation. We're just going to the next level. This is the time of year you do that. I hope you take advantage of that to give it to friends and family. Give them a bottle of X2 and tell them, hey, you want a detox? Try this. Consult your physician. Or give a bottle of Oxy powder. We finally got that back in and have that discounted. Talk about flushing your guts out. Talk about detoxing. Talk about getting your immune system up. The Oxy powder is back in. InfoWars Life Challenge Pack, Super Male and Super Survival Shield, 42% off. That's InfoWarsLife.com. Just some of the specials. Or when you call, they can tell you about all of the other specials that are there as well. 888-253-3139. Thanks for holding, Chris in Nevada. Sorry you couldn't talk to Benny. Go ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. What a powerful guest that was to have on your show on the InfoWars, Mr. William Binney, CIA.
NSA, yeah, but you're right. Go ahead.
My apologies. The point I wanted to ask, and I thought it would be appropriate for Mr. Binney, but I'm sure you will appreciate also, is the attorney's skill of the black arts word crafting. They seem to want to deem to term this warrantless data that they obtain without any probable cause for future pro se executions as data instead of warrantless evidence that's being gleaned for future pro se executions.
That's right. They call it metadata when it's everything, including full recordings of everything, patently felonies, every one of them.
Well, and the prostitutes, of course, they like to tout these different things they've gotten from the torture projects, but the truth is they've provided no actionable intel.
Well, it's designed to actually make us blind from real threats because the globalists run those while spying on good people in government. You heard him. The main focus now is spying on good people. Imagine William Binney is secretly testifying to Congress, trying to fix things internally, the former head of the NSA, and they SWAT team him at his house when he's in the shower in the morning to mess with him. I mean, imagine being the FBI SWAT team.
I mean, ashamed of themselves.
Well, I mean, anybody knows the guy has no criminal record. He's got all these medals. You go knock at the door if you got a search warrant. And you come in and get the computers. Even that is an abuse. I mean, it's purely how out of control is the Justice Department and the Obama administration and all these agencies if they're arresting people like Drake and others. I mean, it's not like there's Snowden who ran to Russia to release the info. But see, what was Snowden supposed to do then? If they're arresting people for nothing, then he did the right thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to bring up the fact that Valerie Jenrette in the White House, who's never been vetted, is actually the Colonel Edwin Mandel House for this administration.
You're right. And that's another thing. As long as you're with the system, you can leak intel everywhere. You can blabber. It's just this country's in danger, just with the incompetence of these crooks. I mean, it's just wild. I want to try to take a few final phone calls right now. Some of the headlines I didn't get to up on Infowars.com. Robber with toy gun shot by a pharmacist with real gun. Don't bring a toy gun to a real gun fight, residents said. And there's video, I can't breathe. Arizona cop attacks asthmatic teen. Guess everybody's a UFC champ now. Eric Garner's wife said she doesn't feel like it's a black and white thing, but basically a police brutality thing. Author, America is careening towards civil war. Paul Watson has an article. That's just some of the reports coming out. George W. Bush, Hillary Clinton is my sister-in-law. That's what's wrong with the Bushes right there. Police department mocks Garner with "we can't breathe" tweet. Totally sick. House chooses new Cold War with Russia. Ron Paul calls it active war. Some of the news up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Black teenager shoots newlywed soldier and executes his pregnant wife. Race baiters are silent. Yeah, so much of this crime going on, black on white, is the target of criminals who happen to be black is white, because it's almost like that's an okay thing now. Just like I've used the analogy or historical example of people that would beat up gay folks and rob them, saying, well, they're gay, they deserve it. This is just sick. Let's talk to John in California. You're on the air. Go ahead, John.
Yes, Alex, I want to make a correction. The government is not rogue. It is totally criminal, and the only way to deal with criminals is by force. Now, who is going to force them out, Alex? Not us. The U.S. military must get involved and implement Operation Valkyrie, because we're running out of time. The ballot box doesn't work anymore. It's broken, okay? And if you are familiar with your history of Stauffenberg and the co-plotters, they had assembled a committee of German civilians to take over as soon as they got rid of Hitler and his henchmen. This is what the U.S. military can do. We're running out of time. They're going to start a war with Russia. They're itching to do it. We must reach out to the military and the Pentagon and have them remove the criminals.
Well, there'd have to be a larger discussion about Constitutional Convention, the states coming together. The bankers, the globalists, the Federal Reserve have been so smart. They've got all the pension funds invested in the derivatives. They've got us so dependent. It's like half our heart is cancer. So if we cut the cancer out, it cuts half our ventricles out and we die. So we've got to find some way to reduce the tumor and then remove it in pieces or something. Because I agree, it's going to go towards heart attack and death anyways. The tumor keeps growing. But if we chop it out at one time, it'll kill us as well. You've got to first educate the public. And you got to support whistleblowers. But I hear you, man. I hear you. It's serious. But it's not just the U.S. It's a global group of criminals that one major tentacle has grabbed us. So, see, that's the thing. I mean, if the military took over and they convened the governors of the states, decided what to do, and what would you do with Congress? Congress won't even do its job. They're all bought and paid for by the same people. Well, then who decides who to remove and who to keep? Usually those type of things get worse, not better. So it's a very sophisticated problem. I appreciate your call. You know what? I've got to end it here. I'm Frank and Chris. Chris in Kentucky, real fast. Go ahead, final caller.
Yeah, Alex, we just had an article in the Courier-Journal about these, after all this Ferguson, New York City problems that we've been having. Now the local police department here is all of a sudden we're going to get cameras on their chest. My question about these things that I'm concerned about, this is all digital database. Does that information go into those cameras?
Yes, they are going to basically keep all of it, and I'm not against it overall. Problem is, cops just turn them off and say they malfunction when they feel like it. So, that's the problem. And then pretty soon, do we have to have cameras on us to prove we're not bad? It's kind of like satellite tracker boxes in the police cars. I mean, it's just like they get the police state first. I don't know. It's kind of double-edged. Great job, crew.